I did create a workbook for the event. You can download it at thescalingmethod.com/capwb, and you'll get immediate access. So this is not yeah, it's not going to take a lot of time to do. It's something you can do pretty quickly. But overall, I can tell you, so in terms of, this overall event, I've got, a lot of instructions in here and things that you can do afterwards to put this into action. One of the things that sort of, I don't know about anybody else that watches webinars, but one of the things that sort of drives me crazy is somebody goes through a presentation and essentially I'm left with, so what do I go do with this? And it could be a sales pitch or whatever. And so, yeah, in the meantime, please tell me where you're from. I wanted to hop in and, also, share with you a little bit about me. And so, just my background overall, and where does this come from with regards to scaling organizations. So I spent a lot of time at GE Healthcare, about 18 years at GE Healthcare, building my ability to work with leaders of businesses and scaling organizations there. I also worked for both startups and Fortune 100 companies in my career. And I've spent the last three decades scaling organizations, and have really learned to leverage my organizational management and change management skills, as well as Lean and Six Sigma, to help build organizations. And so, I've got a lot of experience in this area. I was just having coffee with somebody yesterday, and we were talking about a little bit about my journey as well in terms of doing this. And it brings back a lot of thoughts in terms of, helping organizations and really working directly with leaders to help, deliver key results in their organization. Because most organizations, although you have core competencies, you oftentimes struggle with some of the things with regards to actually scaling an organization, and sometimes rapidly. I mean, sometimes some organizations are actually faced with, the venture capital firm or the board of directors says, look, they really want you to scale rapidly. And whenever you do that, adding those additional resources doesn't always result in the outputs that you're looking for. And so with that, again, I would encourage, anybody that's not taking a look at some of the posts that I've had and other things, there's an opportunity for you there as well, in terms of looking a little bit deeper at some of the work that I've done. I wanted to talk a little bit about the issues as well that we keep hearing from different organizations that are out there, where this doesn't typically come from the leader themselves. Oftentimes we get comments from, the direct staff and things like that. And, but you oftentimes hear things like, I'm working overtime again this week. We can't keep up with this pace. Things like, I'm burned out, and, we're doing the work of two people. And so, inside of an organization, we'll oftentimes touch base, not just with the leaders, but also with individuals that are actually doing the work. And surprisingly enough, you oftentimes find that, the leaders believe that things are going well, and the staff often says, look, I live in this place. I oftentimes, can't get away. My key question for you, again, I'm asking for you to check in and tell me where you're from, and, just put a note in the comments. I'll see it here on my end. In addition to that, I'd love to know, whether or not if these pain points relate to you, and if you've ever experienced any of these, or if maybe there are others, that you've seen. I certainly don't claim to know everything that every person inside of every company has ever experienced. And so there's a lot of different experiences that are out there, and who knows, it might actually inspire me to do something else in our space as well, to, just share something else that we're currently working on that might actually help you. As business leaders, you have a lot of pressures that are continually taking capacity out of your organization. The key factors, that are draining capacity from your organization are both internal and external. And this slide's not meant to be an exhaustive list, again, of all of the unclear expectations or poor processes, tools or system performance, and unclear metrics. And then externally, you also could be facing things like your vendors may not understand or really care about your expectations. You also could have clients or vendors that could be delayed in their timeline. I mean, honestly, this is one of the things that one of the clients that we very closely worked with, is actually experiencing where by working a bit with their vendors, which we'll get into in just a moment, they actually saw some good results overall by just telling them what, the delays actually did downstream. And then you also could have poor raw material quality. And, one of the continual items that we hear lately are just in general supply chain or equipment shortages, also could be, impacting your organization as well. So why focus in on capacity? The main reason to focus in on capacity is to become more efficient and more competitive, and then also accelerate results. Whenever I think about this, there are a lot of benefits overall. And whenever you think about the competitive marketplace and the things that could be challenging your organization, in the marketplace, being more efficient will allow you to benefit your people as well as your organization. And then also you'll be able to accelerate your timeline to results as well. So my commitment to you in this workshop is that if you actually focus on the items that I'm presenting here, there's an opportunity really for you to walk away with key items to go do inside of your organization and be able to benefit the organization overall. And so I'm not going to, essentially give you the panacea, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But there will be work to do after we finish here. And so some of the things that I'm talking about in this particular slide is that, if you actually put the things that I talk about into action, what you'll see is a benefit in 90 days in your organization, in terms of actually the impact that you could bring through the work that we're doing here. So the ways that businesses actually can increase capacity is, there are a lot of different focus areas that many different people would tell you in terms of the number one thing that you should go after. But the reality is most organizations are complex. Most organizations, have this sort of inner structure that you're trying to work within. And so you have to sort of take a deeper look at why exactly are you using capacity inside the organization, and are there opportunities actually to benefit as well. There's no cookie cutter approach in the organization. And so, I would tell you that, as much as people sort of, there's lots of ways that individuals inside of the space would tell you to increase capacity inside of an organization. And here's an overall method to go do it. But the reality is, there isn't a cookie cutter approach. We have to take a deeper look at the organization structure and the people, that you have in the actual situation, using some of the tools and frameworks that I'm going to talk about in this workshop. I also would tell you there's no magic or hack. So there's no way to, just, instantly, benefit the organization. So again, there's a true opportunity to dive a little bit deeper. And then lastly, your issues are not unique. Most likely I've seen these issues in lots of different organizations. I've worked with hundreds of organizations around the world to scale their capabilities. And, oftentimes whenever they have capacity issues, I'll hear, look, for sure you've never dealt with this before. And most likely, as we take a deeper look at the actual situation, it's something that I probably have seen before, unfortunately. So we're going to talk about one company. We'll deep dive a little bit of a case study here to kind of go through what one company has done to actually improve their capacity inside the organization. And, as we go to do this, they've had some really great results as well. They've improved their decision making. They've actually reduced their meeting time by 25%, which honestly gives back an awful lot to the organization every single day. They optimized their inventory cost by 15%, and they improved their supplier relationships, which also had a further downstream effect as well. And we're just waiting on some of the numbers to be able to, further clarify exactly what the impact is of the work that we've done with this organization. But, again, it's tremendous, results for an organization that, honestly was struggling and only adding people to add capacity. And all of a sudden they have a way to actually look at kind of more broadly exactly how to add capacity without just adding people or, other infrastructure that actually could, cost the organization more money. So whenever we take a look at this company, so the primary objective in working with them was to increase operational capacity through a series of strategic interventions. What we did was took a look at decision making and lowering the decision making process for them. We also took a look at setting key meeting rules and guidelines, and then we reviewed inventory, and then strengthened supplier communication and changed their methods of work as well. And so, looking at all of these things, what happened first was we found out that all of the decisions that this organization was making were being done at the highest level. So whether or not if they were in project management meetings that were going on inside of the organization, or if even, there were other leadership meetings that were going on, the leaders themselves couldn't actually make a final decision without involving more broadly these leaders inside of the organization. And so that really slows the overall organization. It also impacts the overall capacity of the organization as well. From a meetings perspective, what we put in place was meeting rules around having agendas, and then also having certain days of the week whenever you can have meetings, and then other days of the week that are more broadly aligned for the organization to go and have, go and complete the work that needs to be done. So what we're going to cover today, so we're going to talk about a series of focus areas for your organization and ways that your organization can conduct an audit. So this is, either you or somebody else inside of the organization can conduct an audit, leveraging the workbook that I talked about a little bit ago. If anybody's struggling to find the link for that, it's in the comments below. I pasted it in as we were going through the countdown timer at the very beginning of the session here. And then also, I would recommend that anyone that is going through this, you can add or subtract items as needed. As I said at the very beginning, organizations oftentimes are different. And so, if your organization is one where you're needing to, focus much more on finance, as an example, maybe that's one area where, the workbook doesn't really deep dive that particular function, and maybe there's an opportunity there. The same thing with, maybe you need capacity inside of marketing, and, similar sort of situation. There are more broad topics inside of the workbook that, we'll talk about in just a minute, but there is an opportunity really to take a deeper look at other functions that are not mentioned. I don't want anybody to feel constrained in terms of the things that you're going to look at as well. I think there's a real opportunity, for leaders to take a broader look at the organization, but also there oftentimes are specific areas that we want to target, and you should feel free to do that as well, as you go through this. The one thing I kept thinking about an analogy here to try and bring back home this idea of you really needing to be able to dive deeper into the organization and really figure out exactly, what it is that's happening that is currently, taking up capacity inside of the organization. With that, the opportunity here is to think of yourself as a capacity detective. You're really going to use some of the key areas and some of the elements that I talk about in just a minute, because experience tells me that you probably will have many of the areas that are covered in the workbook as well. And so those opportunities are key targets that you should feel free to go after, really quickly inside of your organization, target, and then try and improve the capability of so that you get the capacity back, from that area of your organization. The key focus areas that are coming are essentially focused on people, process, and technology. And so, inside of the remainder of the time that we have together, we're going to take a balanced look at each one of these areas and trying to understand the biggest determinants for improving capacity. Under people, we want to ensure that people are empowered and aligned and equipped to perform tasks effectively, which increases your overall capacity. Also, though, whenever you look at processes are often developed and then kept the same way throughout time, for an organization. And so as an organization matures and you add more people, sometimes you have people that are overlapped, that are focusing on the same exact thing. And then other times you may actually, find that, look, the old process, because we've added new people, all of a sudden, doesn't really work for our organization anymore. And so that's an opportunity to redesign things. And I'll talk a little bit about, a way to sort of frame this process redesign as well, so that, in the end, you wind up with a process that really helps the organization and isn't going to take additional effort to try and manage as well. Because I think that's the other concern that oftentimes many people have, is that as we focus in on these things, it sounds to me like I'm going to have more to actually manage at the end of the day. And the reality is, we can actually, make the process fit the work that needs to be done as well for the size of the organization that you have. Under technology, this is another, recent conversation I had with somebody. They just finished a CRM implementation, and the CRM was taking 25% more time and effort to update the information inside of the CRM. And my key question was, was this known before they went live? Did they, really understand, at the end of the day? And many people had tested different components, I would say, of the system, but didn't test it all the way through, unfortunately, before it went live. And what it resulted in was actually a greater capacity drain inside of the organization. The only couple options for this organization, from my outsider's view, is to, take a deeper look at the requirements, as well as working with the vendor to try and reconfigure things, or actually replace it. And so, whenever you think about, what this could be, or what it should have done for the organization is actually benefited it in the end, it seems to me like, it's actually not going to have that impact on the organization, which is, really unfortunate as well. So for human resources and team management, the one thing I wanted to just deep dive here as well is just that there's an opportunity with the people that you have to actually conduct a rapid assessment of the skills and competencies within your current team. I oftentimes hear people say that they have a constraint in one part of the organization, but not another. And all of a sudden, if you take a broader look at the capacity across the organization, maybe there's an opportunity to actually leverage skills from one part of the organization to another. I also would say that this skills audit has a benefit in this way. Many organizations, as they go to scale, you're required by whoever the investors are to add headcount that was built into the business plan. And so oftentimes you'll see things like we'll have X amount of marketing people or X amount of sales or project managers, inside of the organization. This skills audit actually is another way that as you're adding people, you could take a broader look at where are the gaps inside of your organization. And with those gaps, then whenever you go to hire, let's say, somebody might be a strong business development person, but also be able to do something else in marketing. And oftentimes whenever we go and, build a job description, we oftentimes build it only for one function. But the reality is many organizations, especially organizations that are growing and have capacity issues, have these opportunities where people that are in one role could actually play, two different positions more or less, as they're sort of, walking their daily walk in their job. And if you don't define it early on, oftentimes, it's a missed opportunity as well, as your organization grows. You can drive decision-making to lower levels. And I mentioned this, during my case study as well, that driving decision-making to lower levels really is about, this idea of taking a look at where's the work being done, and are the decisions very close to where the work is being done, so that if somebody needs something at that point in time, it's not waiting, because that honestly causes you additional capacity drain. So you want to make sure that, if possible, the decisions for things like projects, the project team should be able to make as many possible decisions inside of the organization as close to that project as possible, versus expanding out and having to go continually to the most senior executive team, who honestly has lots of other responsibilities inside of the organization. Now, there is a structure to this, and I'm not proposing that, say, somebody at the lowest level should be able to approve all sorts of expenditures for the organization or make strategic decisions. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's a way to sort of go through a process in terms of what decisions typically need to be made inside of projects, and with those, do all of them or some of them fit in a category where the project team could actually make decisions closer to the activity that's actually happening. And the third item here is meeting rules and guidelines. And so from a meeting rules and guidelines, I just wanted to cite a couple of things. So according to LinkedIn, the average 30-minute meeting with 3 people costs a company between $700 to $2,000. If a C-suite executive is involved, then that's typically whenever it goes to the higher dollar amount. And it just, overall could be an extremely high cost for the organization. One of the things I think I actually did a video on this as well, just mentioning what Shopify had done. So they went through and actually eliminated all meetings. And what was interesting was some of the benefits that I've heard that came out of this was, not waiting for decisions to being made. They actually narrowed down the number of attendees that would gather together, and then also having, strict rules around exactly what, sort of constitutes, this need for pulling people together. Also, Inc. magazine did a study where they said that limitations on meetings increase productivity by 73%. So this could be things like, no meeting days or requiring an agenda. Those sort of things could benefit the organization as well, in terms of, just really, again, resulting in, people thinking about who actually needs to be here and who really needs to be a part of the conversation as well as the decision inside of your organization. From an operations and supply chain standpoint, doing a deeper inventory review, and I give you some examples of this again in the workbook. Working on your supplier communication. So, at a deeper level, taking a look at, how your suppliers negotiate, how your suppliers, are talking to you, and then negotiating potentially, better terms, whether it's, better delivery schedules, flexible ordering, or advantageous pricing. Those, could be some of the things that you take a deeper look at, with the whole idea that, again, by having the material or having the capability to move things forward, you can actually, really focus the organization by having everything, in place that's needed to be able to move things forward. And then the last thing that's on here, and I talk about it more inside of the workbook as well, that there is an opportunity to take a look at your methods of work. And so this could be, again, taking a deeper look at how do things proceed through the organization. So let's just take it for an example. If it's from order to the time that the order is delivered to the client, then what are all of the individual steps and where does that order actually stop? And those opportunities to actually, look a little bit deeper at, why did the work stop? Why is it not, sort of continuing on? And I'm not just talking about continuous flow, from a lean perspective here. I'm really saying that from a transactional perspective, oftentimes we have things that go into systems. And so from a digital standpoint, a customer will place an order, somebody takes that order, it goes into a CRM. That order then, how long does it sit? And does that sitting impact your capacity at all? Because what you'll oftentimes see is that there are groups of, let's say, orders that sort of come out that all of a sudden impact the amount of work that somebody has to do. And so there's an opportunity to take a deeper look at how the work is being done. In some cases as well, there's an opportunity to complete all the steps of something. And so in our space, let's just take, for example, we oftentimes have samples that have to be tested. And so those samples being collected is very much an activity inside of an organization. But whenever they arrive to actually be tested inside of, a lab somewhere, again, that laboratory is being hit with a lot of work at one particular point in time. So the key questions here are, is there an opportunity to somewhat level out that work that needs to be done? Or is there a way to build your capacity so that every single time that bolus of work is needed, it's understood and people know exactly what to do? And this is where, I think, the lean principles don't necessarily, match exactly the way I see things happening in our industry, because you may collect samples locally all day and then have to test them in a lab at night. Or you may be an organization that's like a CRO and you're sort of waiting essentially for the contract organization to hand you the information, the data, and everything else that you need to actually get started. And so the key question here is, rather than having spikes of work that happen, do you just either accept the spike and also build your organization in a way that it actually can match the needs of the environment that it's in? And so there's a real opportunity to take that deeper look, inside of the organization and try and understand how the work happens, so that at the end of the day, you can benefit the way that it will result in the end. From a technology standpoint, we talked about this just a minute ago. We actually, focused a little bit on, the technology that people may have inside of the organization. And my suggestion would be to take, again, a deeper look. And I've mentioned quite a few ways, with your technology, to how to evaluate it inside of the workbook, what are the must-haves and what are the things that you absolutely need to have inside of the application? And is there a way to in some way, streamline or reconfigure the technology so that, if it's not working for your organization, so that it benefits you greater as well? Under automation, I would recommend that, companies take a deeper look at ways to consider physical automation in addition to the ways that data can move about as well. The physical automation could be things like liquid handling, or ways that you're actually moving things throughout your organization. It also could mean things like taking a deeper look at automation in your lab, or even in your overall workspace for data. There's lots of ways to move data around anymore. Like CRMs honestly come with a lot of capabilities already built into them, and then in addition to that, there are external applications like Zapier that can help organizations move data as well, that could be a great benefit for an organization that's struggling with how their organization might take up capacity as well. From a customer management standpoint, simplifying customer onboarding. So this could be things like, standardizing that initial sort of interaction with a customer to tell them, welcome, and, give them all the things that they need to better understand exactly, what the, what your organization will do for them, and just really creating a powerful but simple onboarding process. You could actually benefit the customer satisfaction, because you don't have somebody that's manually, thinking about these things every single time. You could, again, build the capability of, having an onboarding package for, customers, and really standardizing those real repetitive communications at the very beginning, especially of a customer interaction. And again, I know that CRMs like HubSpot and Salesforce have these capabilities built in. I've seen them. And I think that organizations should take a deeper look at, ways to leverage that technology as well. Instead of having somebody manually generate something, even company wide, you could have things that you do as an organization. From a process optimization standpoint, this kind of goes back a little bit to the decision-making process, but it also could be, when things flow, let's say through one person inside of an organization, that's really a bottleneck inside of the organization. So it's an opportunity to figure out, is there a way to essentially distribute the work that needs to be done by these very focused, areas inside of your company. And so rather than, having one person, or, possibly even a very limited amount of people inside of an organization that focus on something, how do you more distribute, the decision making, or distribute the processes to actually approve things so that they continue to move through in your organization? Because again, capacity is a multi-factor sort of issue to deal with inside of any one organization as well. In terms of standard operating procedures, I mentioned this in my intro earlier, that whenever I start talking about this with many organizations, they think about governance and, sort of having something really restrictive that controls people. For those of you who are in the United States, the analogy that I oftentimes use in terms of developing standard operating procedures is having a procedure that essentially is a bit like a batter in a batter's box in baseball. And so the analogy is that you have this white rectangle that sits under where the batter's supposed to stand on both sides of the home plate in baseball. And if the batter steps outside of that, then essentially they have an issue. Otherwise, they can hold the bat however they want. They can position themselves inside of the batter's box however they want. And there aren't really controls on them. However, if I think about the way that most people think about standard operating procedures, it's almost like you could envision another person standing behind the batter, controlling their every movement, how they stand and where they stand. And that's not what we're describing here. How do you loosely define things and allow humans to also, interact in a way that they are, able to do things a bit their way within a certain parameter, knowing that the work is being done in a certain sort of fashion. And so that's how it benefits the organization and capacity, is really, having that understanding. I also would sort of challenge teams to take a deep look at, if you've added people over time, one, you may not have very well-defined, processes inside of the organization, and people may have to figure it out whenever they come on board. I was talking to somebody recently, and they said, day one essentially was almost like being dropped off in the jungle and, told, good luck, I hope you survive. Which is kind of interesting from an employee standpoint, that that's their first experience with the organization. I've also had others, describe for me that, hey, my job description was written, for me on a Post-it note. So it's, 2 or 3 bullets on a Post-it note, which is an interesting analogy as well. And they, we obviously, continued to work with them, and we had, better procedures and a better job description and so on. But I mean, these are all examples of reasons why you would want to take a look at, as you're taking a look at capacity, what are the ways that people are doing the work? And is there a definition? And is that definition one that actually hurts capacity or helps it? Under communication and collaboration, there's an opportunity to clarify communication channels. This would be, things like having, real clear ways that people can escalate things. I've seen both, on the project management side, I've seen a lot of people spend a lot of time, looking at these ways to try and communicate as well. And I find that it's interesting that, people struggle so much. And I know that just to note one thing I'm seeing on my end as well, I hope you're still hearing me. I'm going to pause for a second here and see if I can't correct it. But I'm seeing bars appear, which hopefully that corrects itself there. So there we go. All back. Hopefully that didn't disturb folks too much, but this is the way a live program works sometimes. So I wanted to just mention as well, with regards to communication, that there's an opportunity to clarify communication channels for an organization. And where I've seen this, be a major challenge for organizations really is to have, ways that people can escalate issues effectively inside of the organization, and that they really know where to go and how those issues then are supposed to be resolved. This is another way that, again, you could be wasting an awful lot of time inside of the organization. From a metric standpoint, the metrics that you have should be, transparent and visible inside of the organization, so that, again, people know where they stand, they know what the focus is, and they know exactly how to manage things. And then lastly, from a project performance standpoint, there's a way that you should, leverage project management tools that allow you to be more collaborative. I've worked both with, kind of enterprise-wide PPM tools, which are big project and program collection tools, which essentially would, help you see everything that's going on inside of a particular enterprise. But also we have tools like, Monday.com and ClickUp anymore that allow you to, again, see projects. So many of the teams that I interact with still today have these separate project plans. And what that sort of results in is a lot of different additional meetings that are needed to try and understand what exactly is going on inside of the organization. And the last thing from a project management standpoint that I would recommend, and I give you an example in the workbook as well, is maintaining a RAID log. So having a way that that people inside of the project can document the risks, the assumptions, the issues, and the decisions that need to happen for the project to be successful. So I mentioned this just a second ago as well with regards to the KPIs. Having clear KPIs both for an individual as well as the organization. Many times whenever people talk about KPIs, they talk about them at the highest level. So here's, the revenue that we're targeting, and here's, operational metrics that we have. And my key question, normally then behind that is, how do individuals inside of the organization then know what they need to go do? And so, this is another potential area for organizations to look at in terms of capacity. If people are working on things that are not directed towards the metrics, then it's an opportunity to take a deeper look at as well. One of the things that I did as a part of building this as well is I've reviewed it with quite a few different individuals to try and talk about, how I would like to see this result. And I said it at the very beginning, the whole idea behind all of these items is really to use this as a list of things that you can actually go back and examine inside of your organization. Maybe some of them pertain, and maybe some of them, honestly, don't. But if we go back to our split again of all of the different items that we have from people, process, and technology, there is an opportunity inside of your organization, really to sort of separate these things out, or you can leave them in the categories that I have them in. It just depends on how exactly you'd like to break things out. But the remainder of the workbook and other things really kind of breaks out exactly how you should examine the next 12 weeks to try and get to, again, more capacity within this 90-day time frame. So if I take a look overall at the capacity building plan, again, if we take each one of the items that we talked about just a moment ago, we can really start to deep dive each one of the elements, so that you won't be overwhelmed, and that you have a way to actually target each one of these areas piece by piece inside of the organization, and then build a plan and then move forward. Again, inside of the workbook, I offer a 12-week, sort of template that you can continue to fill out throughout time, which will help the organization, help your organization really see exactly what needs to be done to help support this effort, as it's going on as well. I know that also, as for any organization that undergoes this, there is a journey that you're going to go through that is not a linear path. This isn't a linear path from, where you are today to people saying, hey, I'm happy and I love the work here and I love, what I do. The reality is the journey to add capacity actually starts with you taking a little bit of action, which in reality will hurt the capacity of the organization as you start to take a deeper look. The benefit is that throughout time, this sort of escalates, right? And as you add one improvement after the other, all of a sudden what happens is this exponential curve happens that starts to benefit the organization, throughout time. And there's a real strong benefit for any company, that starts to take a deeper and deeper look with regards to, how do we continue to do this throughout time. Now, I know that some organizations, also, are going to need, additional support. So, if your organization is one that needs additional support, I would like for you to consider the following. We have built an organization at 5280 Life Sciences that really focuses in on the strategy of the team, the processes, the people, and the technology, so that they're all perfectly synchronized to be able to achieve the strategic goals of the organization. And when we work with organizations, this is the approach that we actually take inside the organization, is really, pulling apart each one of these pieces and taking a deeper look at the organization itself, so that, people get a deeper understanding of exactly where key issues are, so that we can continue to build a scalable organization throughout time. If you were to pull apart our results mechanism, this is where at the end of the day, we have this people strategy. We also have a process strategy and a technology strategy that all roll up more or less into what exactly the organization is focused on. And then by having each one of these individual components around the circle here, you start to see that there's a flywheel effect for the organization, that starts to happen, because what happens is that people are continually evaluating things against this framework and really trying to understand overall whether or not if there's an opportunity to improve the organization as you go forward. And so there's a way that we can help. I'm also happy to get on a call with you and talk, more deeply about any challenges that your organization, currently is having, and see if there's a way that we can help you, just in terms of benefiting the organization also. So with that, let me hop into any questions that anybody has. And while I wait for questions to come back, because I know that there's a delay between the, what exactly I'm going through here online, as well as uh, what you're seeing. I wanted to just quickly, ask that, people submit any questions that you might have in the comment section. And I wanted to just also say, hello to Karam from San Jose. Hello to Melissa in Plymouth. And then Amber, I see you're on as well. I remember working with you at Archer. And so, welcome. It's great to have you here. And then Jamin, I believe, as well. Thanks a lot for being on with me as well. And just happy to take any additional questions that anybody might have. So while we're waiting, the last thing that I'll mention as well is that for those of you who haven't, and I mentioned this at the very beginning as well, for those of you who haven't seen my podcast, Life Science Success, please check out those episodes as well. There's a lot of work that we've been putting in terms of, just interviewing leaders, inside of our space. And there's a lot of opportunity for people to leverage those interviews and, make some connections of your own so that you can, possibly, use some of the elements of the things that we cover, inside of each one of the interviews. Oftentimes I have vendors of products that we use inside of life sciences. I also have, people that are working inside of life sciences so that hopefully we can learn from their career and their capabilities. And then lastly, authors as well. And so those are some of the guests that we have. And, unless there are any questions that anybody has, happy to wrap up as well. I don't see anything coming in, so I'm going to sign off. And I wish all of you the best and have a great week. I hope that things go extremely well. And thanks a lot for being on.